Such an accessible sport when it comes to learning. You can very easily learn the game and have fun with your friends, but is it accessible when it comes to the financial side of it? Courts are expensive, aren't they? Tom, we're here with another episode of the Padel School podcast. We are going to talk about today why padel is not as accessible as it could be.
Yeah,
that's our title.
That's the topic of today. Before we get into it though, you've just been finishing a freshly made coffee that you made.
That I made.
Yeah.
Gloriously made, I might add.
Yeah, we can't see the latte art.
No,
on it,
unfortunately it's dissolved while I was drinking. It was perfect though before.
Yeah, it was close to a heart, wasn't it? It was the intention was a heart. It ended up.
Yeah, it ended up being a bit of a splodge, if I'm honest.
Yeah. But it's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress. We did a really cool latte and barista style session, didn't we, with Horsham Coffee Roastery, and it was learning about the beans. I mean, because obviously, like, I'm pretty keen on coffee, but
I think everyone listening is aware of that.
Everyone who listens to the podcast knows that. But
bit of a coffee snob, actually. I think if
I would say keen. Also an uneducated coffee snob as well.
They're like the best.
They're the worst, right? When I like a good coffee, but before this course, I couldn't tell you what was a good coffee or what I was looking for. Whereas now I feel slightly more educated. I think I could tell you a little bit. I could make it, close enough, I think. But don't expect me to win any latte art awards
just yet
in the near future.
So you've gone from an uneducated coffee snob to an educated coffee snob.
Yeah.
And those are way better.
Those
are way better.
Exactly. So no, but it was a great course. Actually,
I loved it.
I saw lots of similarities between the growth of padel and the growth of specialty coffee. Right? It's like it's been a fad over the last however many years. Like padel, people really getting into it. People starting their own coffee roasteries and their own coffee like cafes and things like that. A bit like people are doing that with clubs.
Yeah.
And they're going through their own learning curve. So yeah, super interesting.
To hear about everything that goes on behind the scenes of a coffee coming from a barista at your table.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
There's so much that goes into a cup of coffee, and we were lucky enough to go behind the scenes to see how the roasting process happens, almost like the history of coffee and everything to do with the supply chain of it. I mean, it's incredible that the system that is in place, and particularly with Horsham Coffee Roastery. I mean, they have I just love their vision and their mindset for what they do. It was I kind of came away from that just really like inspired actually. Not to be a barista, but just
well, they kind of grew the business a bit like us, right? Like organically, pardon the pun, but themselves, and they've pushed it into it. They put a lot of work into it, and now it's a thriving business. So. A lot of respect.
And you're on your own coffee journey a little bit, aren't you? So
I'm on my own coffee journey.
I feel like this education piece in your coffee journey. It's just the start. I mean, I can see you going into coffee tasting.
Yeah. Well, how often do we go to a club and go, let's have a coffee? And we look at the machine and we look at the person about to press...
we into this.
Yeah, we is in the royal we.
We inspect the machine.
Yeah. Well, you look at someone about to press a button on a digital screen that does it all for it, and you think, maybe I'll just have a tea or sparkling water.
Now we know everything that sits behind that machine, all the mechanics, so it's even... It's not just the machine, we know what's in the machine now.
There's no pulling wool over our eyes now when we go into these padel clubs. So,
but anyway, let's get on to the topic of today, which is why padel isn't as accessible as everyone thinks.
Yeah, and I think... this depends where you're listening, right? Where you're playing. If you're in Spain, it's very accessible. I mean, it's very cheap. You can play outdoors, probably within a kilometre or within a mile. You've got several options in terms of courts. But if you're in the UK or US or many parts of Europe, Australia, Indonesia, like the game is growing, but you don't have that accessibility just yet.
Yeah, because the sport itself is accessible, and I mean, I've lost count of the number of times that we go on court with brand new players to the sport, and their story is that they maybe tried tennis when they were younger or tried other sports. Those sports weren't for them, and they haven't picked up a racket since, and they come to this sport and they're not sure if it's for them. And first of all, they do a session with us, they absolutely love it, and they're having rallies, they're playing matches straight away, and you can just see the kind of happiness in them. It's like, they found a sport that they can play, they can compete at. So from that aspect, I honestly don't know another sport that is as accessible as a sport with paddle. So, but like you say, almost the infrastructure around paddle at the moment doesn't make it accessible.
Yeah, and I think so many people take up the sport, like you say, as a group of friends going down to learn a sport. They've read about it or seen about it on social media. Let's go and give it a go. They love it, then they get hooked. And often, particularly in the UK, there's very much oh, this is so expensive. You know, they play in central London and they go, this court is so expensive. And a bit like our example talking about the coffee, not knowing what goes on behind it, like not knowing the rents that they're paying, the cost to build, like the groundworks plus the courts plus the maintenance plus the staff, everything that needs to go into it. So when you go to a club in central London and you say it's expensive, that doesn't surprise me, right? That the land, to rent that land and to build that structure and all the planning permissions that will have had to have gone along with that will have been expensive. And who do you expect to pay that? It's obviously going to be the end consumer, right? So I think at the moment we don't have enough courts around the country where clubs are being challenged to be more competitive with their prices. I think that will come. I think inevitably that will come. But at the moment, generally, like the cost to book a court or to book a lesson is high.
But how do you solve that though? Because like you say, the story behind the pricing is that the rent is expensive and so clubs have to charge that. But with other courts popping up, that doesn't necessarily impact the rent on those places. I mean, they will still have to pay that expensive rate. So how's that going to work? It won't just be a case of, well, as the supply increases, those clubs with those expensive rents will just start charging less, because then potentially that could impact their business. So it's not just as simple as when there's more courts, it's just going to be the prices are going to go down. Like there's going to be there's going to be something that is going to
reckoning. You were going to say.
Well, no, I was going to say it's not. Yeah, it's not just as simple. I think as a supply and demand. I think we need more courts, and there is too much demand and not enough supply. But I am interested to see in a lot of emerging countries where they do charge very high rent because. Court rent, because their rent is expensive, how that's going to work.
I think we have an added problem in this mix in that a lot of people that take the sport up here, a lot of the courts that we have in the UK, as an example, are outdoor. So people are starting the sport, playing only on outdoor courts. And, you know, we've done so many clinics where we'll be indoor. We only book our clinics indoor because we want to rely on being there that weekend instead of being rained off. But they come to our clinics going, I've never played indoors. And then in our minds, we're thinking, well, this will be the last time you ever play outdoor, because once you play indoor, you realise it's a very different game. And what's happening in the UK at the moment is outdoor lawn tennis clubs that are often voluntary committees. They charge a really low membership rate, are putting in 2 or 3 outdoor courts that, okay, they're being rained on the whole year, but they're very cheap for people to play with. And, you know, and so what's happening is that, you know, now we've got all of these people that are used to paying £10 a court because they're renting at their local tennis club and it's outdoor, versus quite high rates for the indoor facility because indoor, like to rent that space, is so expensive. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all works out. I do think that there will be opportunities for clubs to be built. I think part of it now is people looking to build indoor are finding spaces and trying to find, you know, the right setup. And at the beginning, it was first to market, and even very, very high rents, people were paying them just to get a paddle club. Whereas now, I think people have to be a little bit smarter, a little bit more business savvy in order to find a good deal.
But it always baffles me when I see players outside in the rain playing paddle on an outdoor court. I mean, we've just come back from. We were in the Oxford area of the UK, and we're driving through and we passed some paddle courts, and we're coming into winter, and as usual, it's raining here in the UK, but you're still seeing players that there's still probably an awareness piece for players, understanding, like you said, around once they play indoors, they won't go back. But those players that haven't played indoors yet, they're still out there in the rain playing, and it always baffles me because, as we both know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, that once you play on a wet court, the glass is wet, you can't use the glass, it's slippery, it's dangerous, but people are still playing out there.
But the thing is they have no alternative. Like where we were, I think there were like 2 or 3 clubs dotted around. There was a member one that had a cover, but for the public, they were only outdoors. So those people had only ever played outdoors. So they have no idea what the game could be like if the ball wasn't twice the weight it was and the glass wasn't wet. But they're enjoying it still, and so not taking anything away from that. They're having a great time playing outdoors in that weather. But the fact will be is once they play indoor, that won't be quite as enjoyable. And the same if they go on holiday to Spain, they play outdoor in the sun, and it's a completely different game. We've recently been on a paddle holiday. They've all come out and gone, oh, the ball is so bouncy because it's a dry court, the balls are dry and relatively new, and they can play, suddenly they can use the glass. And I think that's almost part of this indoor-outdoor, but also part of the accessibility. And I think as well, talking about accessibility, like the kit, the rackets, at the top end, like you see some of the models here, that these are the expensive end, but you've also got lower end rackets, so it doesn't have to necessarily be expensive to start in terms of equipment, but it's often the court rental that's the expensive bit, isn't it?
Well, and that's always the first thing. If I speak to people that have heard of paddle and perhaps played it once, the first thing they say is, oh God, the rackets are so expensive. Like, why? How am I paying £200-300 for a racket? And they're not used to those sorts of prices. But like you say, I think players don't realise that there are those lower end rackets, and the technology in those rackets, they do differ. But if you're a beginner player and you're just starting out, you don't need the premium rackets.
The other thing on accessibility is coaching, right? Like, so often clubs and coaches are doing one-on-one coaching because it's easier for the coach, and it's an expensive lesson. And to be quite honest, like if you go to the majority of clubs around the UK, you're probably not going to get a very good coach. Like the majority. There are some great coaches out there, and I know, plenty that are doing good programs and good training, but you probably are going to have a one-on-one lesson with someone who doesn't have a lot of paddle experience, and you're going to have to pay £70-80 a lesson. So even there's a bit of inaccessibility as it comes into getting trained by a coach. Yeah, and
that's a big thing for us, isn't it? The accessibility of coaching. I mean, that's why we've created the Padel School in the first place, and it's definitely something that we're pushing hard for, isn't it? Because with the online and the digital now, the digital world we live in, and that's why we created our platform, why we do so much on social media with tips and trainings for players, is because we genuinely believe that coaching should be accessible. But it's at that stage now where in-person coaching is difficult. There just isn't that accessibility, but it keeps driving us every day, doesn't it, for our mission to make coaching accessible.
Yeah, it's always been our goal, hasn't it, to really help players learn the game so they enjoy it more, they bring their friends, they build confidence, they have more fun. And you and I could go around the country and give clinics, but there's only so many people we can help, right, in person. But digitally, like that's why we built the Pathways, is so that we can help so many more. And we know that the roadmaps that are in there are what beginner, intermediate, advanced players need to improve their game. And we're not really taking away from in-person coaching. The idea is that it's hybrid, and we are trying to support the coaches and support the players to learn more and beat their friends, right? Like and enjoy competing.
Yeah, exactly. And all the links to all our resources will be in the show notes if you want to check those out, or on thepadelschool.com. 5 years from now, what does an accessible paddle landscape look like? So if we say at the moment in a lot of emerging countries it probably isn't as accessible as it could be, if we sit here 5 years from now, what do you think an accessible sport it looks like in paddle? Like what do we think?
Well, I think we'd probably lean into what other sports are doing. If you think about it, if you think about tennis, like there's lots of park tennis courts that you could join. Like with Freya, my daughter, I go down and we hit on a park court because we're just trying to learn the game a little bit and just play. You can play for free, but it's outdoor. The quality of the court is so, but it's accessible, right? But if I wanted Freya to be in a lesson, I would sign her up to a group lesson initially, probably at a tennis club that's specifically focused on programs. And if I wanted her to reach a higher level, then I would look for an academy or something where, in the region there are decent players of her level, and I would anticipate paying a bit more for that because it is specialised performance training, and that would definitely be indoor. Like, I don't see any academies in tennis, for example, being outdoor. I just don't think that could work. And I think we will probably do something similar for the paddle. I think at some point in universities and schools and parks, there'll be paddle courts that are available, probably outdoors. And I think that we will have some standalone clubs that will be good if you just want to go and play with your friends. And then I think we will have ones that are going to be good academies, good kind of HQs or regional centres that people can learn to improve at.
And so for that, we need coaches, courts, more players. So generally just growing the game more and more.
It's all part of growth, isn't it? Everyone talks about, when are we going to catch up, our European counterparts? But it's just time.
Yeah.
They have had more time in the game than us. So it's coming.
All right. So 5 years from now, podcast, we'll look back.
My latte art in 5 years' time is going to be unbelievable.
Well, we're not sure.